Hello, this is Josh Person, and today I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about resilience, which is turning into an enormous topic all over the world for many, many reasons, partly because we're all dealing with a lot of personal things that are forcing us to be more resilient. And the word resilience refers to bouncing back or recovering or responding to change. And so as we go through the COVID crisis and many of the disruptions going on in companies, this is turning out to be a muscle that we really need to build. And so I want to talk a little bit about what it means. And first, for some context, if you think back about black swan events, we used to talk about them when I was at Deloitte. They're actually much more frequent than you realize. I've been thinking about my career. I remember the 1987 stock market crash, the 1989 fire in my neighborhood where I was evacuated and most of the Oakland Hills burned. 1991, we had a massive earthquake. We had the 2000 recession where I was laid off, the 2001 9/11, the Iraq War, the 2008 crisis, and here we are. And of course, if you're in Boeing, you've been through a black swan event. If you're in Wells Fargo, you've been through a black swan event. If you work for Volkswagen, you've been a black swan event. If you work in Equinix or Equifax, you went through a black swan event. So there's a lot of black swan events going on. And so resilience isn't just something that's sort of a hot topic now. It's really a corporate capability. So let me talk a little bit about what it actually is. I've studied this in the past. I remember in 2008, we did a lot of research on this. And what I found is the source of some of the best ideas is actually the military. The military has published quite a few studies in the last 2 years, maybe a little bit more, about the nature of asymmetric, violent, frequent wars and military activities. And as if we learn this in the Iraq War, things happen faster, more frequently, and more surprisingly than ever before all over the world in different ways. And that's really what we're experiencing in this crisis. And what the military has learned is that the big old command and control structure of getting everybody in the same place and pointing in the same direction just doesn't work. And so what I want to talk about is really two sides to resilience. Organizational resilience, what we need to do in our companies, in our HR functions to be resilient and to create resiliency over the long run. And then individual resilience, what do we all need to do as individuals and how do we help ourselves and our teams and our people be resilient also? So on the organizational side, let's go back to the military for a minute. Some very intelligent commanders and Stanley McChrystal's book talks about this, and quite a few others have really learned that there's 5 big things that allow a large organization under attack in a war, whatever you may call it. You can call it a war, you can call it a crisis, to respond. The first is a distributed operating model with central coordination. Now, this really flies in the face of many of the HR operating models that a lot of you have built in the past, and so it's really an important thing to think about. In a resilient organization, power is distributed to the field. Business partners, local HR professionals or local HR executives in teams, in business units have an enormous amount of authority and skills and expertise, but they're coordinated through central coordination and information and communications. And in fact, in Stanley McChrystal's book, which is just such a wonderful book, Team of Teams, he describes a role in the Iraq War, which he called the liaison officer, is the person who actually communicates between the teams that are out there fighting different groups in the ways that need to be done locally. And so in our role in HR, this means taking the business partner role, or whatever you call the embedded HR professional in your company, very seriously, giving those people autonomy, but tools and information and coordination to do their jobs well. And we're going through this now. Most of you have stand-up meetings every day. You're creating much more global coordination processes. But it isn't centralization and service delivery at the lowest cost. That is the old model of HR, and it is not going to get you to where you want to go. So that's number one. Number two is capabilities. One of the things the military studies show is that everybody needs to be trained all the time. And one of my friends who used to be a commander in the Navy said to me, basically the military only does two things. We fight and we train. And when we're not fighting, we're training. And that's in some ways the way we need to think about our jobs in business too. And in our roles in HR, if you're not highly capable and trained and cross-trained in all the things that are going on in the HR function and all the disciplines and domains that we need in the company, you're not going to be able to act locally. So if you're a D&I specialist, you need to know more than just D&I. If you're a comp specialist, you need to know more than comp. And so this idea of the full stack HR professional that I've been promoting, and we've been really spending a lot of time building in our academy, is number two, making sure that your HR team is highly trained, highly skilled, and cross-trained in all of the different domains so they understand the implications of different decisions that they made. Number three is relationships between people. And in the military, they call this the socio-technical or socio-technological systems. And what they really have discovered in the military, and this is very true, and most of you know this, is that technology is not enough and org charts are not enough. It's relationships between people. It's people knowing each other. It's people having met before and understanding the strengths and weaknesses and skills and personalities of other people. And so I'm always impressed by great companies because their HR teams spend time together. They have offsites every year, maybe more than once a year, and they spend a lot of time discussing and debating and comparing what other people are doing, and that creates personal relationships. And so that's number three, is making sure that your organization is resilient through the relationships people have with each other. The fourth is shared data. And in the military, they call it shared awareness. And that's such a great concept because what we really want is we want everybody in the organization to know what's going on. So when the crisis or the disruption or the interruption happens, we don't have people saying, well, I don't think that's a problem, or that doesn't sound bad to me, or I never heard of that before. How come you're telling me about it now? So that's really something we can do in HR with data. Now, analytics has been quite a journey through HR, and it was kind of a mess when I first started studying it 20 years ago. And unfortunately, HR analytics and people analytics is a more immature part of business than customer analytics and finance and some of the other areas, but we're getting there very, very fast. You have much more sophisticated platforms, integrated tools, and if you work for a big company, you probably have a people analytics team that's been doing it for a while, and they already have real-time data, and they have quality data, and they have a data dictionary. And what you can do during a crisis is you can plug in the real-time information, and we've seen that now. I think I shared a screenshot of what Nokia did where they took the data right out of the Johns Hopkins database and put it into their people analytics system, and they can see who's traveling, they can see location-related information, where the infection is growing or not growing. They can look at families who are people that are alone, working by themselves, who might need support versus people that have kids. All this data gives you shared awareness so people can make decisions locally in coordination with each other. The fifth part of resilience in the organization is leadership and trust. And leadership is always an issue. It's never goes away. But in this particular case, what the military found is that the leaders in a resilient team are agile and curious and creative, and they create a sense of trust. Because things will happen quickly, and you will have to make decisions on a regular basis and rethink decisions continuously, and you'll have to listen to people with new ideas. I mean, just yesterday I had a really interesting conversation with the HR team for a large medical device manufacturer out here in California that has cancer detection equipment all over the world in hospitals, and all of their employees, their maintenance people, their sales people, their service related and consulting people are in hospitals in COVID infected locations, and it is a big deal for them. And they had to do a crisis rethinking of who should go where, what are the processes and safety practices we should implement, should we buy people new clothing, how do we equip them? And they've been doing that for the last couple of weeks because they're an incredibly well-connected creative team. And the woman who runs it, who I just got to know a little bit, seems to be one of these curious, innovative people, and she's reporting to the CEO and the board on a regular basis. So those are sort of 5 things to think about in your organization. Organization and operating model, relationships between people, shared data and awareness, a sense of capability building and deep levels of skills, and a leadership model that connotes relationships, trust, and continuous innovation. And by the way, this is a muscle. This isn't something that you do once. This is not crisis communications, which to me is a small subset. This is designing the HR function and the skills and the capabilities of HR so that you are resilient always, because there will be something else. We're not out of this one yet, but I guarantee you in your company, something else will come up. Now, the second half of this whole issue is personal resilience. And we all have, stories and opinions about that. So I don't claim to be an expert, but I'll share with you what I've learned from the folks at BetterUp and some of the psychologists I've been reading and talking to. There's some things that we know. The first in personal resilience is having a positive attitude. Now, some of that is the way you're born. Some people are born with a sunny disposition, as they say, but actually there's a lot you can do about that. The way we communicate to people, the vision of the future, the sense of optimism, the sense of direction, the ability to listen to mistakes and discuss them openly and giving people psychological safety. These give people a sense of optimism. We're going to win this war. We're going to come out of this. This is one of the things I think that's going on that's a problem in the federal government right now. We're getting all these messages from the President of the United States that are not positive, actually. And so they're really upsetting people. But that's number one, is this sense of positive optimism. And that can be done through direct coaching also. Number 2 is the work itself, making the work safe, purposeful, and fit for the people in the jobs. Now, right now, most of you are changing work very rapidly. We have work at home. And by the way, remote work is a massive, massive change. That is the number 1 or number 2 issue on the minds of HR people, is how do we do that well? And there's a whole program we've built on that. We can talk about that. You can watch another video on it. But then there's also the purposeful fit of the work. If you've been laid off or furloughed, or your company says, we don't need you in this job anymore, we would like you to go over and do something else, that's a bit of a resilience issue for you. Do you want to do that? Is that something you feel capable of doing? Is that something that you think you can do well and you'll be rewarded for over time? Those are a huge part of resilience, of being in a role that gives you a sense of fit and a sense of what we call flow. This is something that I actually can do well and I can accomplish. So that creates personal resilience. The third issue with personal resilience is relationships. And I talked about that in the organizational side, but it's obviously very big in the personal side. And let me tell you some interesting data on that. One of the studies that I read every year, it's a very, very long, dense thing, is called the World Happiness Report. And it's an exhaustive study of a 1 to 10 scale of happiness in all these different countries, and they correlate it to many, many things. And what they've discovered is that there's 4 fundamental dimensions of happiness. Health, your physical sense of vitality and health. Your financial health, do you have enough money to live your life well? Your relationships to your family, friends, and community, and your sense of trust in the system, trust in the environment, trust in the society that you live in. Well, which are all important, by the way. And they're all part of resilience. But the relationship one is particularly highly correlated to overall happiness. In fact, one of the things that study finds is that even in countries that are highly financially successful, like the United States, because the relationship between our individuals and our neighborhoods have broken down, our happiness has dropped a lot. And so relative to you as an individual, you as a manager, or your company, connecting people to other people is vitally important. And it's particularly difficult when people are working from home. Their kids are at home. They're worried about their parents or their family's health. So we need to foster those relationships and take them seriously. That is a very important part of personal resilience. And for individuals, maybe they need a coach. Maybe they'll need to talk to a psychologist about why they're fighting with their spouse. I mean, there's a lot of stress in people's lives right now. And that is a particularly difficult thing that reduces your level of personal resilience. The fourth area that comes from Martin Seligman's research and lots of other sources is a sense of purpose. Why am I here? What am I trying to accomplish? Do I feel good about what I'm doing? Now, relative to work and the employment relationship, this gets back to something you all know a lot about. What is the mission and purpose of your company? And if you define your mission and purpose as to grow and make as much profit as possible, that's not going to turn people on. It's going to turn people on during good times, but not during bad times. So particularly now, when we're very uncertain and we're all threatened in a whole bunch of chaotic ways, go back to your mission statement, go back to why your company was founded, go back to your CEO or your founders or whoever's around that knows what this means, and re-communicate it in a serious way and put it in the context of where we are now. If you're a healthcare provider, obviously you've got a wonderful opportunity. If you're a pharmaceutical company, but if you're an insurance company, if you're a bank, if you're a manufacturer, you can get behind the issues going on in society today and get people excited about it. And it will give people a whole sense of energy and purpose and much more resilient personality. That's number 4. Number 5 is progress. And this is something I've talked a lot about in the context of employee experience and employee engagement. And let me kind of go back to that. In many ways, this whole area of employee engagement is a coin with 2 sides. On one side is this topic of happiness and engagement and retention and collaboration at work. On the other side is productivity. And the reason, and they're both the same coin, because when people feel they are getting something done, they actually like their work. And the reason for that is work is actually a fulfillment of our personal desire to contribute to society. That's what I believe work is. Yes, you have to make money and you have to get a career out of it and you want to be proud of your employer and proud of yourself and get recognition and all that. But really comes down to meaningful work means you're doing something that you're fulfilling your own personal mission and your own personal skills in a way that's helping someone, and you're making progress at that. And when your work is frustrating, bureaucratic, your manager's in the way, your team's disorganized, the goals are not clear, you're getting distracted by things that you don't want to do, that really hurts your personal resilience. And, to some degree, we see this in the leadership in the federal government right now, where it's not clear who's doing what, and you can sort of tell people are slightly disengaged, and that happens in companies, in teams, in business units, and in individuals. So one of the things you have to think about for personal resilience is clear the decks. Make it easy for people to get their jobs done. Give them just absolutely clear direction on what we need to do and what they're accountable for and how they're going to be rewarded for that, and get rid of as many distractions as possible. Now, in most of your companies, you've been through 11 years of growth, so you've actually built up a lot of bureaucracy. And that's what happens when companies grow. They pile things on, and we don't always know how much complexity we've created because the whole business is growing anyway. Well, now that's over. We're in this reset stage, and so giving people a sense of progress will give them a sense of resilience. So going over that again, it's positive direction and positive psychology. It's a sense of fit to their job and safety. It's relationships with others and their families. It's a sense of purpose, and it's giving them opportunity to grow. So these are important things to think about. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video is that resilience, well, first of all, we're going to be doing a lot more research on this. So this is not the end of this topic. I think resilience comes up as an artifact of problems. It now has to become a business strategy for the long term, not just for the next year. These issues of organizational adaptation, identifying and creating shared awareness, responding quickly, empowering people, creating wide and deep capabilities, and creating a sense of personal resilience are what will make your company succeed. And basically all of the companies that I talk to right now are really understanding this. So I would encourage you to take these concepts, these 10 ideas that I'm talking about here, and we'll be presenting much more in the next couple of weeks, and just go through them in your HR strategy, through them with your team, and talk about how you're implementing them now. And I think what you'll find, not only will it help you get clarity about responding to the crisis we're in, but you'll build a set of capabilities, a new operating model that will help you grow and thrive for many years to come. Thank you very much. This is all part of the big reset information that we're trying to put together for you. And I'm always interested in your feedback and stories and any comments on any of this information. Thank you.